So, I just got back from my local IMAX theater and saw Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's new film. And I will admit that I'm still trying to digest what I just saw. I think partially that's because I've been mainly focusing on more popcorn movies since probably COVID. When you're talking about these old school directors like Coppola, it's a different cinema experience than most contemporary directors. And even people that came up with Coppola. I mean, it's like Lucas and Spielberg aren't bringing the kind of heat that they did back in the day. And I know people like Coppola and Kubrick, their types of films, you can definitely tell that they dropped acid or something back in the day because it's not spoon fed the same way that a lot of modern films are. So from the get go, obviously the visuals are stunning. I don't know what exactly he was shooting for, but I thought it was really cool that, again, this is somebody that's been in the business for decades at this point. And while you could kind of tell that the visual style is not as contemporary, they were still incorporating a lot of visual effects and styles that you would see from contemporary filmmakers. And you have to applaud anybody that can be in the game that long and still be doing those sorts of things. So kudos to him for that. I had to look up the name of his cinematographer on this, Mihai Malamare Jr. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, and put it in the comments if you know it phonetically. But Jojo Rabbit, Sleepless, Megalopolis, Winning Time, The Harder They Fall, Love Is, Love Is, Love. Very well lensed. I really liked the look of things. There was really only one scene that I saw that really called attention to the cinematography. There's a scene, a wedding scene, that's almost a bread and circuses thing. And the camera is shifting like a boat on the ocean. And in IMAX, I generally don't get seasick or really bothered by that sort of thing, but it was such a long, sweeping move that it really called attention to itself and made me a little sick to my stomach. And I was glad when they got out of that. But overall, really liked the visual style of it. It covered a lot of ground, both cinematically and from the story as well. It feels like something where he was just working through a lot over the course of this film. I won't say that it really appealed to me in the way that a lot of films do. I like a pretty solid arc and a three-act structure to the way that I like to go to a lot of films, at least if I want to come out feeling really satisfied. But again, this one isn't spoon-fed to you. And there are a lot of thematic elements that are going on at the same time. And for somebody that's older, obviously this thing about time is very central to it. Love and loss and greed and kindness, empathy, hatred. It really covers a wide gamut when it comes to the human experience. And so the storyline almost becomes secondary to all of these things that he's trying to convey. And the characters themselves somewhat lacking in depth for me. I mean, there's a lot of really charged things that are brought forth, but it's also got a really pretty large cast, mainly centering around Adam Driver and Natalie Emmanuel, which was great. Generally not a big fan of Adam Driver's work. This was so steeped in sort of a Shakespearean narrative that it didn't have as much chance to be very Adam Driver-y for me. And he also played somewhat of a pretentious character, which I kind of find Adam Driver to be, so it kind of played into how I already view him as a person. So that was great, as far as me being able to just give him a pass on that. But well acted. I mean, I will say that he has chops. Just generally doesn't appeal to me, but he did a good job with this. Natalie Emmanuel, I loved in Game of Thrones, and it was great to see her in something like this. I always felt that she is a great actress and wanted to see her in more. So to see her pop up in something like this, a Coppola film, which doesn't come along that often, it was great to see her in that part. and she brought a lot of humanity to it. Again, it felt like in some spots, I wasn't quite sure how her character was dovetailing in, and it felt like some things were done a little bit expediently inside of the storyline that didn't feel quite organic to me. Shia LaBeouf was kind of unrecognizable to me for the first third to half of the film, was being very Shia LaBeouf-y. I think the one thing I'd say about this is that the actors in this probably enjoyed a lot of latitude and probably got to have a lot of fun doing this. And I would say very much so of Shia LaBeouf and Aubrey Plaza. She's an interesting woman, an interesting actress. And she's very much Aubrey Plaza in this as well. I can understand why he said, I want Shia LaBeouf, I want Aubrey Plaza, because they played themselves to a T and played it well. But there are some scenes at the end where people were just outright laughing at some of the things that were happening. Jon Voight did a fine job, not in it very much, and again just sort of played this elder character that just kind of popped into the plot every once in a while. Dustin Hoffman, I was disappointed by how he was utilized because he wasn't in there very much. It felt like was just throwing Dustin a bone to play that character. Either that or a lot of his stuff hit the cutting room floor because he's not in it very much. I love Giancarlo Esposito. He generally plays a heavy in most of the things that you see him in. And throughout this, you're never really quite sure where he fits in or what he's supposed to be doing. Well acted, but I just don't think a very meaty part for him necessarily. I think all around, well acted. Taken as a whole, it's a very impactful film and allows you to interject a lot of yourself into it. So it allows you some latitude to be able to apply maybe some things that I'm working through or that you'd be working through as you're viewing it, which I think makes it a much more engaging cinematic experience. It goes through some odd thematic changes throughout it. And so I even heard some of the people as they were leaving going, I don't understand how that, and I won't spoil anything, but how that, was so in there so much, but it didn't really play in to what was going on in the story all that much. But I feel like, the Scorseses and the Coppolas, you usually have a pretty long cut when you go in there and you do the first rough assemble on it. So it could very well be that a lot of things hit the cutting room floor to keep it to the length that it was, because it was just a little over 2 hours, which I'm not used to for filmmakers of that stripe. Scorsese, again, he's usually 2.5, 3.5 hours for a lot of the stuff that he does now. So to have somebody like Coppola come to something like this with so much scope was really surprising that it was as short as it was. I feel like both in the soundtrack and the fact that it was so focused on Rome as this through line reminded me a lot of the Cecil B. DeMille epics that I remember growing up on when I was a kid. Ben-Hur, just the music played into that, the idea of Rome played into that. Again, the epicness of the story played into that. Kind of reminded me of Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. Again, because it had that Shakespearean feel to it. I know that just painting a wide brush to say that anything that Shakespearean reminds you of Romeo and Juliet is maybe not fair, but it did remind me of that. I don't know exactly what he was trying to say, except for us being a brotherhood of man at the end of the day. That, again, was a bit... There are some title cards throughout that Lawrence Fishburne narrates. Ultimately, this is the message that I want you to get out of this. But up until that final card rolled, I was like, okay, this is Rome. It's the city on a hill. Is he talking about America and possibly our fall from grace and where he would like to see us in the future? Because again, I don't know if Coppola's got another one left in him at his age. So this could be his magnum opus. Could be his final letter as a filmmaker. But the idea of being aspirational, I think, was the thing that I took away the most. The fact that we can all be better, the idea of legacy and wanting to build upon things and not be so focused on the now that we forget about the future. we need to be working towards something greater. Storyline, again, fell a little bit short for me in the traditional sense, but the size and scope of the film made up for that. The visuals, definitely compelling. Definitely a filmmaker that still has an incredible amount of talent, and it's on display in this film. I would say if you've got the opportunity to see it, go into it with open eyes and just allow it to kind of wash over you, because it's not a traditional viewing experience, but it's definitely one worth checking out. Thanks very much. This is the first review that I've really done on this channel. I've been a lifelong lover of film, but just never really sat down to convey these things before, so I hope I see you back. I hope I keep up with it. But until then, go out, watch some films, enjoy, like, comment, subscribe. See you later.